Just a second.
Okay.
Ben Johnson, you want us to look at your ceiling fan?
Wow.
So let's go ahead and get started. Out of respect for everyone's time, I want to first of all thank you all for giving JCPS the time. Dr. Polio, thank you for giving community the time for this meeting. It has been a long time coming with the racial equity policy, and I just wanted to remind people a quick narrative. My very first meeting with Dr. Polio was around the racial equity policy. It wasn't about what are we going to do. It was like, let's get this racial equity policy up and running. And both of us kind of sat and talked about, believe it or not, this is pre some of the things we're dealing with, of course. Does this city have the will to do that? And this city and community have the will for a racial equity policy. A little resistance, a little bumps and bruises, but 2.5 years later, here we are with the racial equity policy, with recommendations from community advocates and national supporters of the work. And we have a racial equity policy that I would argue is making a difference. Long, long way to go. We might not see all of the effects of this. All of us on this call might not see all of the effects of this yet before we even retire, but we are making gains. And I think that's important that we understand that. I also, this is hot off the press. I emailed this to Dr. Polio earlier this week, but I wanted to share with you all some successes in a time in Louisville and not JCPS, in a time in Louisville with so much stuff going on and the racial tension. And it's easy and respectfully so to kind of get caught up. But I just want you all to see what we are a part of and the work we're moving. And I don't do stuff for fluff and I don't scratch my head unless it itches. But since the start of the racial equity policy, guys, JCPS in Louisville has created a Black Teacher Institute. We have done a district-wide implicit bias training, an increase in Black male teachers. This is a record high this year for Black male teachers, according to Dr. Amy Green Webb and Chief Jimmy Adams. We've created a Black student union, Louisville teacher residency, employee resource manager, which we can talk more about, the racial equity growth goals for every certified staff member is huge. The racial equity analysis protocol, which has really kind of swept Louisville, and we know we got to do some more with giving it some more teeth. And DQ, if you could slide up, I think there's, two more down there at the bottom if you can get to them.
Oh, okay. Can you see that?
Yeah. Okay. So the affirming racial equity tool is the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s with our resource teachers have been a big part of that with the help of Carmen Coleman. And minority bids and contracts, guys. We have made our goal on some big contracts. We've made our goal on some big contracts since the start of this racial equity policy. So as where there is a lot of work to do and this opportunity gap, which predates us, it's actually older than anybody on this call. There are some things that I definitely want you all to be proud of and be the megahorn or megaphone for us when people start talking about what is and is not happening. I maintain, Dr. Polio, that this is another reason to vote yes for JCPS and the taxes. But this is just 10 things that I think everybody on here should be proud of. 10 things that have happened since we have approved the racial equity plan. 10 things that the superintendent has stood beside and taken bumps and bruises and criticism for too, but look at where we are. So I wanted to start off with that. And I wanted to tell you all, me, John Marshall, born and raised in Louisville, are very proud of these 10 things and not saying that we have arrived, but I just think we should all be proud of it. I will go around the room and let everybody speak to this, but I'd like the leader of the JCPS to speak to any of these things that if he would like to. Now you have 15 minutes of your own as well, but I would love for you if you have anything to say about these 10 successes or anything else as we get started before I let them chime in on what they're proud about.
Well, I think, John, I just wanted to say, I think it's building the foundation. And so, that is of this racial equity work. These are the things that are providing the foundation for us. So really proud of them, really proud of the numbers. I want to also say of Black administrators and really Black principals. So that, an example of the work was since January, we've hired 12 new principals. 8 of them are Black. So, what we had 2/3 of those, of the last dozen principals we hired were principals of color. So we're proud that, that is a part of this work too, hiring administrators. And so, it's difficult, tough work. And I'll say this, I've had a few other superintendents ask me about doing this work and what you have to do. And I said, first of all, you need to be able to feel uncomfortable because, especially, in this position, you are going to get attacked for these. And second of all, you better be ready to handle some people on the other side coming at you. And I'll give an example. We talk a lot about curriculum. And as you probably saw the story, we had a book in elementary school that was approved by our counselors, our counselor group, that said something happened in our town, was a story that you should talk to students about race. And it was actually approved by the American Psychological Association, and 10 different publications said it's a book to talk about with children about racial tension and police shootings. And so some of our schools read it, and some of the people put some stuff online about it because it was a story of 2 families, one Black, one white, who talked about a police shooting in their town. And so they got mad at a couple of the pages, but they didn't read the book. And the whole book is all about inclusivity and children including each other. And at the end of the book, the Black student and the white student welcome a Middle Eastern student into their, friend group at school. But the pushback that I got on that was pretty substantial. And the next day I was asked, do we keep it or do we pitch it? And those are the moments when you say, okay, we can't just talk about a policy, we have to take action too. So I read the book myself and I said, I don't see anything wrong with it. It stays. And people were not, and we endorsed it in our comments. People were not happy. The second thing, and I use this as an example, the amount of negativity that I got just sending a letter to employees about the Breonna Taylor decision was unbelievable, and one of the most disturbing things that I've been a part of, that, because I don't think I said anything negative. I just said people are hurting in the JCPS family, and Breonna Taylor was a JCPS student, and systemic racism is real, and we have to double down on it, is pretty much what I said. That's what the lesson is, but people were very upset. So, the lesson on this is we got to keep pushing. We got to keep pushing harder. We've done some good things. We have work to do. But I think we've laid the foundation with these things, John.
Thank you. And I see some others have joined us. I will not, guys, let's not just have everybody kind of pick what they're proud of, but just 3 or 4 people, first come, first serve, and then we'll jump into Dale Coyne kind of just talking about the timeline on how we got here, then we'll get to the meat of it. So any 2 or 3 committee members that wish to share something they're proud of, or, just their experience with being on this committee. And I thought I saw Ben. Ben, I wanted to tell you, your audio was coming in and out, but anyone wish to share?
All right. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are, Ben. Okay, yeah, I got you.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'll go ahead and start then. I'm just appreciative of the work and the opportunity to do it, and the diversity of the committee. And then quickly, even what Dr. Polio just shared shows how important this work is. And you alluded to it when you said this work started before some of the things that we're going through came to light. But they didn't start before some of those things were actually happening. And if the organization that deals with and nurtures and has access to the most young people, not just in the community, but in the state, doesn't deal with and address it, then why are we here and what are we doing? And we're advocating our responsibilities. So I'm extremely proud to be a part of this, even in my role as an individual, as a Black college graduate, and in my role with the city. So I'm excited about it, and I'm all in, and whatever you need me to do, I'll do. And Dr. Polio, I just want to applaud and appreciate you for supporting the work that Dr. Marshall and his group are doing, and to continue to stand strong, because the pushback you got, I'm willing to say, is from people who aren't affected or who don't think they're affected by what's going on,
Right.
and are pretty short-sighted. And that's just one man's opinion, but I'll get off my soapbox and just say thank you for this opportunity.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and call out Principal Hill, Dr. Polio. He's a new father of some babies, and I know he's tired, so I'm gonna make him more tired. Principal Hill, what are you proud of, or excited about, or anything?
I mean, as a principal, I mean, obviously I'm on the board, but as a principal, I'm excited that the district has done a lot of the groundwork for racial equity. It's easier for me as a school principal to go to my staff and say, hey, here's what we need to do for racial equity, and the district provides a lot of that. I mean, the data is easy to find. All of the PDs that are offered centered around racial equity that benefit our students. I think it's very beneficial. And obviously, I've never been to another district, but I can't imagine tons of districts are providing the resources that our district is providing for our students.
Thank you. And someone else, and then we'll move on for Delquan, kind of just give and DQ, it doesn't have to be 10 minutes, but kind of just give how we got here. Someone else on the committee.
Yeah, let me go. I definitely want
to. Oh, there you are, Kumar. I didn't even see you on there.
How you doing, Dr. Marshall? Doing good, brother. Well, yeah, I think that all the work we're doing is important because we're making representation a priority, and that's important. You're representing with the students, the teachers, and the principals, and with the minority contracts. But I think even more importantly is that we have community members that are holding us accountable with things that we created, like the REAP. They're coming to us asking, has this and that run through the REAP. For them to even have something that they can fall to that was created for that purpose is a plus. That means it's working. It's doing what we wanted it to do.
Thanks, man. I didn't see you on there. I appreciate you being on here. Guys, I know we all have some things that we're proud of and, of course, things we're concerned about. But I do want to respect our time, and I'm going to hand it over to Delquan Dorsey, who's actually leading this part of the committee. But I also wanted to say, and I talked to, I think all of you all on here, as opposed to me presenting two reports to Dr. Polio, who sees reports a lot, I called you all, the leadership team that I'm a part of that helps me with my work, chief equity officers, also took what you all had and I won't say added, but fortified the work and was very impressed. I will share with you all just not even what's written in here, but just the comments on super community, super committed. Make sure they don't forget this. And they were just very pleased with you all's candor and the fact that this was not just a task force to say, let's just get more GT kids in GT. Y'all gave teeth to it and raised the level, the bar for us to jump over. So I will commend you all on that when you have Donna Ford and Ivory Tolson and James Ford saying this is good work. So I appreciate that. All right, so DQ, you're up, man.
All right, and I'll be brief as possible. Just to kind of remind everyone, this Advisory Council for Racial Equity came as a result of the racial equity policy. And the purpose of this group is to advise the superintendent and the board on recommendations and to observe and monitor the impact of the racial equity policy and the plans and the goals moving forward. And so just to go back about a year ago, we actually, time flies, we met with Dr. Carmen Coleman, Chief of Academics, and her staff, and she brought quite a few of our directors, and basically we were able to hear presentations, ask questions about gifted and talented, about A5 program schools, and just a whole host of issues. And then later on that fall, we actually, during the Council of Greater City Schools, we were able to have some guests to participate in our meeting from the conference, and Dr. Marshall presented on the REAP. In November, we had a community event, actually had two events. Eva Studio worked with Giselle Danger to actually have a community event where we were supporting our refugees, immigrants, and ESL families to some of the community partners. also that month, we did a racial equity community meeting where all of Dr. Polio's cabinet, led by Dr. Marshall, presented to the community and actually answered whatever questions they had that night. And then moving through to the winter, we had another community meeting around racial equity. And in February, we were able to meet with Dr. Polio, and we had a great conversation. It was Dr. Polio was having so much fun. We almost didn't get to get out of there that night. But got a lot of feedback, and so that conversation actually informed the recommendations that we have today. Then of course COVID hit, and so there was a little gap in us meeting. And then of course with the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd situation taking place in late May, we got together and kind of did our best to support each other. We saw council members very involved in some of the marching and protests, and just being able to pull not only our students together, but teachers wanted to be involved. And so that all led to where we are today with Dr. Marshall. It did an update recently. And then so we looked at the update information and then went back to the draft of recommendations we have. And that's how we got to where we are today.
All right, committee, here's how this is going to work. Dr. Polio has seen the recommendations that actually came from your work, the board presentation, our community conversations with our national experts, and you all's input. So if I am correct, Dr. Polio is going to, and Delcon, if you can put that up.
Okay.
Excuse me, y'all, the recs. He's going to kind of talk about how do I say this? The big ones, the ones we're really going to drill in on. We're going to tackle all of them, but the big ones, and then we're going to keep moving forward, and then we'll turn it back around and do some clarity and follow up on some of the recommendations that we need to talk about right now as a collective. So we have about 15 minutes for this. I am not a stickler for time. If we get out early, get out early. If we go over early, if we go over a little bit, we go over. But y'all, I want to say this, and I do not blow smoke. The man has read the daggone recommendations. I've sat on committees and community task force with a lot of you, Ben, and we have issued recommendations and they don't sit places. I am telling you all this, that he has read them and we're going to kind of discuss them. But I just wanted to say I really, really appreciate the work we're doing, and I appreciate the recommendations that y'all put forth, because many of you know I'm really not big on meetings, committees, task force, ad hocs, etc., because I believe it's a way to waste time and not move forward. But I'm glad that we're doing this work, and I'm glad that you guys are pushing us. So Dr. Polio, we can jump right into recommendations you like, recommendations you want to prioritize, however you want to do it.
Yeah, John, why don't tee it up with, let's go through, the major ones that you want me to discuss.
Sure. Okay.
So let's go through it that way. I can't find my sheet right here in front of me.
Delcon, let's go from top down and let's go to the.
I read it yesterday, and now it's somewhere on one of my stacks here. So.
Okay. So we can start right here at this diversity in curriculum and instruction. And I will tell you, Kumar and Tyra, who I know Kumar's on here, were very verbal in this, as was Mary. But this actually the very first one. Each school plan is to have clear steps on what they will do to decrease opportunities and belief gaps. Your input on that and your thoughts.
Yes, I mean, I definitely think that should happen. I mean, I think one thing I want to make sure we do is, we don't, especially right now, is add like another report or something of that nature. So I'm all for the steps. I just think we need to include it in the things that a school does now, if that makes sense, and I'm trying to get it down where, a school plan is an active thing that they do. So yes, if it's part of their equity plan, then I think that's excellent, John.
Okay. And then this other one, you kind of talked about it around the lessons and how we're trying to look at lessons to make sure they're not offensive, and monitoring the lessons as to establish to make sure they're not racist or to make sure they're not offensive. anything you wish to speak on with that one?
Well, that's a hard one because you have 6,000 lessons going a day at so I mean I think how we do that, yes, it's extremely important. I think how we do that is the challenge with that. So I'm all for having staff dedicated. I'm very much in support of a holistic curriculum, and working in whatever way we can get that done. But I think we have to figure out the how we do that with so many teachers and so many lessons going on. How do we do that? But I'm all for it, John.
Okay, and then I will say, Kumar is on here. He has actually been admitted into the Black Experience Teacher Institute, and we have some and you'll be on that call too, Dr. Polio. That will be one of the big steps in addressing that as well.
So let me add this, John, that I believe this out of most teachers. I do. It would have been me as a social studies teacher entering the profession. I didn't have the knowledge, the skills necessary to know what to teach, because unfortunately, most of us teach like we were taught or teach what we were taught. And so there are a whole lot of teachers I know that want to have the curriculum, the supports. So I think the more we can build out of a team like that, the better off we will have with curriculum. So I'm excited about that development and glad Kumar's on it.
All right. And then the last one, more so about the tax referendum. Should this pass the 12 million? And again, the Kumars and Marys of the world have been very verbal, and Tyra, about needing this. Can you speak to that about what it looks like and why that's important for this tax referendum and your commitment to racial equity on there? And then Delpon, we can go to some of the other ones.
Yeah, so I don't want to say I have all the answers on what the money should be spent on racial equity. I think that we can all discuss what that should be when it passes. Now, I do know this, the teacher residency, we should double or triple that. So, that is where I'm committed to having the money. I think having an intentional bridging the digital divide and ensuring that every child, and especially every Black child, has a device and connectivity, and being intentional and purposeful like that. That would be controversial for me to say that. But I think that, I think our education will change so much when we come out of this. I mean, think about the opportunity we have for us to what we could do digitally now that we've done in person before, whether that's parent-teacher conferences, whether that's meetings, whether that's interventions for kids, whether that's when a kid misses school. Let's stop the old way of going to the teacher and asking, can I have my makeup work? Why would we not have the teacher tape themselves teaching the lesson and the kid can watch it and be at the class? I mean, these are things we can do. So I think we have to be very intentional about that. I think we can keep learning hubs going after we come back and pay teachers to go into specific neighborhoods to mentor kids and tutor kids on weekends and after school. So those are some of the ideas I have. I don't want to say I have all the answers on that, but it's nothing new. I just think we invest more dollars into this work. And I'm going to say this, John, you've heard me say it. And all of the 54 million, for the most part, is really focused on racial equity in a way. And so this is, and I've said this about 5 times in the past week. Last week at the Council of the Great City Schools virtual conference, I heard Dr. Ibram Kendi speak. Kendi has written a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And he says it's not good enough to say you're not racist. You're either racist or you're anti-racist. And so he defines what being anti-racist is. But when he asked in the panel, they asked him, what should policymakers and educators do to ensure an anti-racist agenda in education? And the simplicity of this answer was so powerful. He said, those students, those kids who have the least amount of resources in their homes need to have the most amount of resources in their school. And that needs to be exponential. how can we expect a child who has the least amount of resources in their home compete with a child who has a lot of resources in their home if we don't give them at their school the most amount of resources? So I will say this Yes for JCPS is the most important thing we've ever done around racial equity. And I think we can redo our funding model with this money so that we can clearly say the schools with kids with the least amount of resources in their homes get the most amount of resources in their school. Finally, John, I do want to say I've gotten some feedback for this committee. I've gotten some feedback that we've let the equity scorecard drop a little bit. I think we need to think about in this space because we've done great on the other things. The REAP has been fantastic. A lot of the other, things we've worked on to ensure accountability. I think we need to focus more on getting that equity scorecard back up. So I think a dashboard, whatever it might be, I think we need to double down on that equity scorecard. Just my opinion.
Yes, and that I see you see that in there. And Krista Drescher-Burke's on here, and she is definitely willing and able to do that, and that has been actually a recommendation. And that's something, guys. Let me be very clear. That's something, since that's in my shop, that I need to be better at evangelizing too. Because if we really think about it, the equity scorecard predates all of this, and it kind of launched it a while ago. So we will go back and revisit that. Guys, before we go to another section, any of the committee wishing, now this isn't the time to ask questions, wishing to add comments or unpack anything for the as it relates to this particular section. I will say, Kumar, I saw you on TV going at it with somebody about taxes and saying if you don't vote for it, you're racist. Uh, you wish to say anything on the taxes and the stuff you've been saying and experiencing, or speaking to?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because it's just really crazy, man. Because we're only paying 72 cents for every $100, where everyone around us, all these non-diverse cities, the less diverse you are, the more money you paying. Anchorage is paying 98 cents per every $100. It's just ridiculous that I went to high school in Frankfurt, and Frankfurt's paying more than we are. Oldham County, anywhere that's less black than we are is paying way more than we are. So it's okay for them to raise taxes over there wherever they are, because education is important when it comes to dealing with their kids. But when it comes to dealing with ours, no, we need to manage our money better. We need to do this. We need to do that. And we're supporting the whole state. The money that we get is not all staying here. We got to go send money to support us and supplement other pieces of the state. So we just need more money in Jefferson County, and I applaud these efforts. When we're asked for 6 cents, we really should be asking for a quarter.
I appreciate that, guys. And again, I want to go on record and say, you heard Dr. Polio say we need to lift up the scorecard. You'll hear it from me, and I'll hand it off to KB. We will pull that back up and get that. It's out there and it's updated better than it was when I did it. What Krista's done with it makes it look a whole lot better. Mine looks like Flintstone work, but we're going to make sure we marry that more. Delquan, let's go to the next section. Yeah,
John, real quick, just to finish up on the yes for JCPS. I want this committee to know this. We have to have this, but if we lose in 12 days, and I've been inspired by the amount of people who have gotten behind this, but if we lose in 2 days, this will be my message. All right, it just delays us getting this. We will be back in 2 years. We will make the case for the next 2 years, and we're going to be at it again. So we're not going away on this no matter what. It's what our kids need. I don't want to delay 2 years, but if that's what it takes, I feel good about where we are and our chances, but we're not going away. So we'll be back, even if that is not successful.
Thank you. Right here, Delquan, I couldn't tell if you went to another. Okay, yeah, no, I see it now. So I know this has been create an opportunity for community support and accountability through community centers, as well as community and faith-based organizations. Dr. Polio, if I may, I will first tell you all, because I don't think you know this, Kumar and Mary, you were on the call. The Justice Now Hub with Nari and Matt, I'm excited to say, is in diversity, equity, and poverty. And they are working on getting that up and running. There are other hubs up and running, but I just wanted to let you all know that the Justice Now Hub is sitting in diversity, equity, and poverty. And Matt Nari are leading that work, and it's going to be really, really good. Ben, do you wish to comment on the community support and anything else? Just, I mean, around Dr. Miller, you know, this Ben's the reason why we even have satellite offices. But Ben, do you wish to add anything to that as it relates to these recs?
Yeah, no, I'll just be real quick. And I heard you mention something about the potential for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, the centers are under my direction, and whatever we need to do, we'll do. We typically are open either 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 12 noon to 9 p.m. But I'll commit publicly now. We haven't been able to be engaged in the NTI just because of some discomfort as the numbers have risen and on and on and on. I'm still pushing for that. As soon as we can, I want to be a part of that. But when we get on to the next cycle, I commit that whatever JCPS feels like will help the kids in the areas around the community centers, that's what we will do, including adjusting the staff schedules and the operating hours of the community centers. And like you mentioned, similar to California, if it means writing up an agreement and giving JCPS keys to these facilities and let you all operate on your schedule, then we'll do that too.
Great. Thank you, Ben. That's awesome.
I love that.
Thanks, Ben.
So here is one, or anyone else wish to comment on, Kumar, you kind of talked about community centers as well at our meeting. I know it's kind of a broken record, but you kind of commented on big picture, or was that a different topic?
No, that was the same thing, because we really, you know, I really enjoyed the work that we did with Big Picture. As far as I think it really engaged the kids and motivated them to do more with aligning their interests to careers and getting them out and exposing them to things that they wouldn't have seen, you know, getting them that work experience. And not only doing that, but using the school, the English and the math classes to teach whatever they're learning. You know, it was really personalized learning. We did a lot of good work with the Big Picture. And like I said, I got one of my students is working right now for Ford, graduated working for Ford, but he was working in Ford while he was in school. And we were trying to build programs around him doing math problems that related to robotics, honestly. And just doing different works around that. So that was you know, I think those type of opportunities our students need, especially right now. Everyone's trapped in the house, but we got to figure out how to get them out of the house or into the community and involved with some businesses to help facilitate their learning.
Thank you. Hold up, DQ. Dr. Polio, we'll just go ahead and go to some clarity too, as opposed to having to go back to the document. Can you kind of clarify, because I think I understand it, but I don't think Matt Berry's on here and some other ones, the province and authority of SBDMs as it relates to curriculum. And even though we're doing all this work, where SBDMs stop, start, and sometimes end, I guess.
Yeah, I can. And unfortunately, I don't agree. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't agree with all of it. And so when KIRA was passed, one of the provisions was site-based decision-making councils and the legal authority that they have. And it's pretty clear on it. And so, first of all, hiring, you know, is an SBDM decision. So what the staff, who they hire, you know, all of those things. That is a challenge we have when it comes to diversifying staff, is that it's still you know, we can put some heat and pressure, but it's still a SBDM decision. That's clear law. Another one that's very difficult is curriculum lies in two places legally. Curriculum lies at the state level and at the SBDM level. And so that is a major challenge we have. That's in the law. That's not our decision, our board's decision. And so that's why it's really hard for us when it comes to curriculum, is to, you know, we can really influence and pressure to some point, but there is a fine line where if we go too far into that, it becomes, it could go to OEA, and there could be charges at OEA of violating SBDM authority. So the law is pretty clear on that. So we push as hard as we can without violating SBDM law.
Thank you. Anyone, and I don't think Matt's on here, but anyone else wish to say anything about that? As we're still doing all this work, I think it was important that you all had this recommendation and kind of heard where there's a little rub or friction with that. Anyone not so much teachers and counselors that on here. Anybody else with questions about that? Okay, so let's move down to let's just go to the Shawnee one, Dr. Polio. Increased
Okay.
course offerings at the Academy at Shawnee. I'm not sure who submitted that, but do you want to talk about what we're looking for in Shawnee along with its beautiful renovation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just came back. I sweat. It was hot outside. I did an interview with me about Shawnee, and they pulled out a 1998 yearbook of me and the coaching pictures in the yearbook of me from 1998. Good memories. And then we walked the neighborhood. So I walked about 4 blocks, interacted with a lot of people. It was a lot of fun. I didn't know that many people in West Louisville knew me. But it was a lot of fun to just talk to people and interact with people. But one of the questions I was asked was about Shawnee. And I'm just going to be clear with you as a former high school principal. The smaller the school, the harder it is to offer not only AP classes and elective classes. So they have a school that has 375 kids in it. That has a major impact on foreign language, on art, on music, on pathways, on AP courses, all of these things, major impact. And so I don't think it's a matter of necessarily offering it. I think it is the inequity in our student assignment plan. And Shawnee's low numbers are not a result of what Shawnee has done. It is a result of our racist student assignment plan. And so I can't say enough about that we need to ensure that, yes, the kids have all the opportunities for electives and AP classes, but we've got to get those numbers up at Shawnee. And one of the things I did was walk 1 block out of the back of Shawnee and talk to the family whose kid has to go to Doss. And that's a powerful conversation to have, because they said, if he misses the bus, he can't get there because we can't get him out to Doss, and there's no TARC that goes to Doss. And so that's what a kid 1 block from Shawnee is facing right now. No one else in this community has to do that. No other, my child doesn't have to do that. And I'll say this, and I'll wrap up on student assignment. I'm pretty passionate about it. I was on a call like this with some East End business leaders, and they were asking me about it because they want diversity in schools. And I said, how would you all feel if your child didn't get into a magnet and I said your child has to go to Valley High School? And they looked at me like crazy. I said, no, get on a bus and go to Valley High School. Nothing wrong with Valley High School, but how would you feel about that? And they all said it wouldn't happen. And I said, that's what West End families have had to do for 36 years and had no choice in the matter. And so one of the impacts has been the decline of Shawnee because kids can't go there. So we've got to build that up. And I think our support plan for the new Shawnee will provide all of these options for kids that go to the school. And I'll say this lastly, I'm more of a believer in dual credit now than I am advanced placement. Advanced placement because the kid has to pass a bias standardized test at the end of the course, as opposed to if I have dual credit with the University of Louisville and the kid passes the class with a B or an A, then they get dual credit at the University of Louisville. It doesn't require taking a bias test. So we're really looking at ramping up the college credit, the dual credit offerings as well.
I don't know if you can unveil this. Can you talk about what you and the president of U of L were talking about with Shawnee? Or is that?
Yeah, I just told him I know that Neely has a real desire to increase Black students at U of L. Now they have a higher percentage than most schools, and specifically to draw kids from West Louisville to go to the University of Louisville. And we were talking about it, and I said you could have an official partnership, and we have a lot of partnership with Shawnee. But I mean, let's do it where, you know, professors from U of L, and whether it's virtual, they come into a class and the teachers, you know, they co-teach it, the Shawnee teacher and the U of L teacher. But I think that we're talking about a kid could walk out of Shawnee with 20 to 30 college credit hours to the University of Louisville. And then of course they're going to go to U of L. And so I think we just have a straight pathway from a middle school to Shawnee to U of L and maybe even JCTC in between. And I know both presidents are on board.
Oh, all right. Tyra, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Carol?
Okay. And
What kind of
I'm
classes are
excited.
those? What kind of classes are those? Are those STEM classes or those social sciences or what? What kind of classes are those?
Well, we will work on all of them. So some of them will be career and tech ed, but some of them will also be math and science courses. The hard part about, just so everyone knows, dual credit when you talk about schools is the teacher must have an advanced degree in that content area. So
Right.
getting an education degree, like me, I got an education degree with an emphasis in social studies. I couldn't teach a dual credit course at college unless I had a degree in social studies as well. So it's really limited to the amount of teachers that are out there that can do that. And so that's why dual credit becomes difficult. But we're talking about overcoming those hurdles where instead we say, you have a professor that's maybe virtually coming in or goes to the school when we're able to do that. So we're working through that and think we'll have a good menu of courses shortly.
And I just want to add one important point that came up when we talked about Shawnee last night. Now, yes, we won't, because I inspired the Shawnee part, but the student that will still have the option to go out to Dawes Valley Eastern High School. It won't be forcing students. They just have the option of staying in West Louisville or going out past the Waterson.
Correct.
And Ben, let me do this. I just saw your question. One of the things, and Telva's on here, one of the things that I'm going to do as we go into our next iteration and formalize these recommendations they have drafted on them, I'm going to put Dr. Shauna Stenton in front of you guys to really answer some of the questions that Dr. Polio said. You heard him say understands the curriculum needs, still working on it, but to talk about what we're doing around SBDM diversification and SBDM training. Another thing that I have to do better at, which neither Shauna nor I shared, is SBDMs, the president and vice president, or however they did it, had to come to an institute and hear about the racial equity policy and the racial equity work we're doing and encourage them to start thinking as such. But Ben and committee, I will bring forth, and a lot of y'all know Shauna, I'll bring forth Shauna to actually sit in on a meeting so we can ask her questions, or so you all can ask both of us questions and get some of that cleared up. Is that cool, Ben?
Yeah, and
scroll up.
Yeah, and to your credit too, well, I remember we did a whole training with all SBDMs on the racial equity policy.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the institute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, let me say this, a workaround on the SBDM. This is how we did the academies of Louisville. So early on, they were trying to make schools do it, and SBDMs were saying we don't have to do that. And so instead, the way it went was, okay, this is a great program that we want every SBDM to okay. If you give us your stamp of approval on doing this, we will give you the following resources to support it. It was amazing how quickly SBDMs jumped on when you start talking about that. So, if we talk about and get to where, we want schools to have this expanded curriculum, and we'll provide it to you and give you the following X, Y, and Z in resources, then that's when SBDMs sign on. So it's doing it. It's more of the carrot instead of the stick, I think. So it's something for us to consider.
Okay, and thank you for that. Telva is taking notes, and this is stuff we will revisit. Going to programmatic access, Delquan, right there. Have all community groups develop ideas and provide support that align with JCPS academic goals. I'm not saying this has been, but ever since I've met Ben has been adamant that it's community groups' responsibility to help kids, but make sure we line up with our public school, the public school system, to make sure it all aligns. Ben, is that you, Ben? Am I guessing wrong? And Ava, is that you too that suggested that?
I can't say it was me, but it sure sounds like me. I'm behind it 100%.
Ava, was that you?
It might have been me, but if it's not, I'm with it.
Yeah, it was a suggestion to formalize those partnerships and utilize also the networks that exist in other organizations that are also doing similar work and supporting the work that is doing GCPS, like Americana Backside Learning Center, which is, I believe, is one of the hubs already. So just kind of like finding more synergy between what is already being done separately, but now together.
Okay, and I did hear you say that we are in Americana. But we're doing more. I know you and I have talked. We need to do more around racial equity in that neighborhood and using that hub for more work. And we're going to get to that, I promise. Anything else you wish to add to that, Ava?
No, not really. Not on that point. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, and any of these points, please, by all means, I'm just pulling out the ones that I know we needed to clear up or make sure. Gifted and talented, pretty much improving the access and beyond identifying gifted and talented students of color. Many East End and magnet school programs have designated classes. So I think the question, or I know the question, Dr. Polio, I think they met with either Dr. Shearer or even Dr. Chevalier around the gifted and talented. And as we have raised the numbers, community is hearing that kids aren't in a gifted and talented class, they're getting special attention. And it's different in like a Ballard or an Eastern, which I'm very familiar with Eastern. So I think there just needs to be some clarity or some speaking to how are we assuring that our students of color that are gifted and talented are actually getting the same as kids that are in a all gifted and talented class. I don't know who wrote that, but I'm trying to give it justice. Or Delcon, can you speak to that? The genesis of that?
I remember making a point like that because I've been at different schools where I know that students are picked to be in gifted and talented or advanced placement or any of the good programs, and are recommendations from the teachers to who can take those programs. It hasn't been streamlined like, hey, everybody see if you're in this program. But
Okay.
it's just that type of thing, picking and choosing who can you put in there, and of course, when they're doing that, our kids are getting left out.
Right.
Okay.
And I think,
Delcon, if I can say something real
yes,
quick.
please do.
Definitely as a counselor, I know we have expanded the students that we are inviting to be a part of the gifted and talented program to be more inclusive. And I think there's more of a unified form because we had to physically go in and key all of those students. So I think that we're moving in the right direction of identifying more students through other modes of not just using standardized tests, but now it could be teacher recommendation. It's not just solely based on how students perform on MAP testing or the CogEd or any of that. But I do think better streamlining what the plan is for them, because if students have, if they are gifted and talented, they too require interventions, just like students who have an IEP. So better streamlining what that looks like across the district would be helpful.
Yeah. And Jasmine, how long has Mel had gifted and talented, or whatever it's called?
It is brand new. So
I did want to add that, not to put feathers in anyone's hat. The traditional program, for whatever it's worth, and my daughters are there, and my wife's the principal of one. The traditional program is now doing what, Jasmine, with gifted and talented?
We are identifying students as gifted and talented.
So please, community members, understand that. And I can tell you, Dr. Polio will not share, how dare we get into the traditional world and change it and identify this, that, and that. It's traditional. It's supposed to be shirts tucked in and hair not below your shoulders. And we're identifying, as Kumar said, as Jasmine said, we are identifying students from a racial equity lens with gifted and talented in some of our traditional programs.
Well, it's good because
Dr. Polio, you wish to say something? I'm sorry.
I was going to say the law requires it. So, I mean, identifying is not an option. The law requires it. So, I mean, it's one of those things that has just been a tradition in JCPS for a long time that I'm glad we've changed it. John, I just want to do a time check with you, and I'm sorry I don't have more time. I've got about 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll fly through this. Delquan, scroll down to the next sub.
I'm sorry. I've just got another event to go to. I apologize.
Oh, no.
You're going to be there by 7.
So school culture and climate. I think one of the interesting ones is the create a robust onboarding plan that mandates candidates are oriented in racial equity policy and have clear understanding of their role in the organization. I don't know who wrote that, but Dr. Polio, can you speak to it?
Yeah, you know, I think we should have some standardized questions on any interview that, that we say anyone who is interviewed at a certain level has to answer these questions effectively. I think that's number one. And then I agree 100%. I think implicit bias needs to be onboarded. And then, I think we need to think about some type of, you're right. I think that's a great point of what does racial equity mean for JCPS? So 100% agree with that. I think it's a great suggestion.
Okay. I don't know who. Okay, so a concerted and more holistic narrative around the success of Black students needs to be shared frequently and intentionally. Um, One of our biggest allies, Mary Barnes, do you want to speak to that one? I don't know if you wrote it, but I know I have heard you guys speak to being more. I mean, we got to talk about the inequities, but there are students that are doing a great job, Black males. Mary or Dr. Polio or both want to speak to that?
I'll just say I think it's a great idea, and I think that would be something that we could say communications is a part of their growth plan or movement forward as well. So I'd have to, depend on Renee Murphy's expertise on this, but I'm sure she would be behind it 100%.
Oh, we have talked for the community. We have talked, and that is going to be a plan. She's even looking at quarterly updates in the CJ about, the good stuff the Kumars and the Delquans and the Johns and the Michael Hills are doing inside of JCPS, aside from just athletics. Mary, was this something you had talked about, or am I making this up? I don't even know if Mary's still. Mary, you still with us?
I am. You might have made that up, but I think that the more opportunities we provide for our Black students to show that they can be successful, the more opportunities we'll have to celebrate their success. And so as we open up access to like gifted and talented programming and AP programming, we will naturally have more stories to share like that.
Okay, thank you. And I will just share with you all, I actually wanted to make sure you all knew the one that says whiteness, white fragility, white privilege. We have a glossary. We'll be working with the rest of the cabinet and those that are doing this kind of work, and Dr. DeFerrari, to put those inside of there as well. Just definitions to make sure we all have a working definition of that work. So that'll be something that we move into the work as well. Okay, Delquan. Staffing diversity. Delquan, you did a lot of work with this one. Is there particular ones you wanted to pull out?
Let's see. I think the number one thing, of course, is as we move forward with trying to improve the system to get better results to address inequities. One of the main barriers will be the union contract. And so we have two representatives from the union actually on the council, and they even recommend that look at potentially filtering the union contract through the REIT.
And Dr. Polo, you were on a town hall and Kessa Herring asked that. Do you want to speak to that real quick? And then I know you got pressed for time. You want to speak to that one? Do you mind?
Well, I think that I agree 100%. I think putting it through the REAP. Now, the hard part is it's such a big document that, and this is what I say, I would suggest breaking it into its specific parts. So the transfer process, I think the transfer process harms schools with schools that have populations with high amounts of Black children and high poverty, because teachers transfer out more, and we have inexperienced teachers at high poverty schools. So, I would be willing, but I think that may be different than something else in there, if it's teacher discipline. So, I think it would be very difficult to do it as a whole. I would suggest doing it in parts. I think it would be good. And yes, I think the contract does need some changing. So You know, I think that would be a very good exercise to do.
Anyone wish to comment on that before we go to our Latinx concerns and our disproportionality in hiring for that one, as far as staffing diversity? Anyone else wishing to comment on that?
No,
Okay, so one of
about that creating that survey. I don't know. There's something just hit me about survey and Black teachers, and I'm really just interested on seeing that go through.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things that in conversations we've had, and even with the national leadership team, first of all, it says recruit Black men for K through 12, K through 3, specifically tested subjects, and then the survey and Black teachers as what are they expected to do? Is John and Kumar just supposed to corral and be the disciplinarians? Or are we put in positions to be instructional leaders and principals? And that did come from the national leadership, but I know you guys have talked about that. But that is something that definitely made it to the recommendations for Dr. Polio to look at. And then I'll follow up with you all as we prioritize these, and you will see exactly the ones we zero in on now, later, never, whenever. So I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, Kumar, that's one I'm very interested in as well, as we talk about culture and climate and staffing. Last one, I believe, Dr. Polio, is create clear pathways for foreign certified professionals. Ava, I know this one was you. Do you want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes a lot from the experience of working with different organizations and with the international community through the city, with the Office for Globalization, that we know and we understand that it's a high community, that it's a professional community that could have their certifications or have all the credentials, but from a different country. So that's just like try to find pathways from them, for them as well, to become teachers here in the system in Jefferson County. So that comes a little bit from that experience.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. I want to remind that certification is not done at the local level. That's done at the state level with EPSB. Now, we can put some influence and pressure, look to, like we did with the teacher residency, where we created a pathway, but that did take, you know, these candidates have to go to school for a year. But I think we could work on something, and then we really need to influence legislators and EPSB to help that. So we can work on it. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that that's not a local decision on certification.
And if I may, I just add very quick, Dr. Marshall, also, I do have to recognize the work that Selena is doing, because she actually went to talk with our organizations and to promote the training that they have, the special residency for the schools, for the teachers. Yep. So that was a very, very positive thing, because we do have a lot of people from the community Latinx that is born here in Louisville. So that's definitely a pathways from them as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Selena's knocking it out. She's doing good work. Let's scroll up, and we're almost through this real quick, Delquan. And this is the last one, central office commitment. I just think there are some important ones in here. Outgoing public spend analysis. I believe we're actually already doing that. Dr. Polio, that's the second bullet. Central office provides an ongoing public spend analysis on what district is spending directly on racial equity.
Yeah, so I think we can, and I'm just going to say the difficulty, John, here is sometimes it is hard to just pinpoint something that may be racial equity. So like if we say we're going to do a summer program and bring 1,000 kids in to get additional, teaching and learning, additional instruction, and we say 600 of them have to be, students of color, is that racial equity? Or the teacher residency program, we spent 1.2 million on the teacher residency program, is that racial equity? So I think the hard part sometimes is defining, because so much of what we do is racial equity. I'm not trying to water it down. I'd love to do that. But I just really think we need to have some clear understanding of what those are so that we can track them. But I'm behind it all the way. Okay.
And then I think the last, Delquan, you worked on this one a lot. Is there one in here you would like? And then we'll just kind of close up.
The council asked, and I think Dr. Polio will remember this, potentially having some implicit bias and culturally competency training for our board members and cabinet level leadership. Because we, to be honest, we all could use a refresher on the latest terminology and concepts especially when around education. So that was one of the recommendations from the council.
Yeah, so all of the cabinet took the implicit bias training like teachers, but I think anything, I agree with you, any training, any book study, anything around racial equity is important. I can't make the board members do, we can encourage, but like for instance, when we had a speaker, John, who was the speaker we had? I'm sorry.
Dr. Paul Gorski.
Dr. Paul Gorski, and invited all the board members. We had 2 that came to that session, but there's not a lot of things I can do if they don't. And a lot of people out there think I'm their boss, but it's the other way around. That's the way it works. But I agree with what you're saying, Delquan.
All right. So last thing, guys, I think we went through these pretty fast, but the whole recommendation thing will be sent out. It is in draft form. Yep, it'll be in draft form, so you all will get that. But I want to again thank you all for this work. I want to thank you all for not having me have to submit, Dr. Polio, 2 reports. And kudos to you all for the national leaders who are doing this work far bigger and better than me and saying, this community is really on to something. So I just wanted to thank you all for that. And 1 or 2 people close out, then we'll let Polio close out, and then we'll get on down the road. So anybody wishing that hasn't spoke to say anything, and then we'll let Dr. Polio close out. Oh yes, thank you DQ as always for your leadership, and DEP, Vanessa, Krista for really making this happen. I just kind of sit back in air traffic control, and these guys really fly the plane. So I want to thank them. But 2 committee members wishing to say, Tyra, you're awful quiet. You want to say something?
I'm at work.
What's that?
She's at work. I don't think she can.
I'm at work. I'm listening. I'm just taking and noting everything, you all.
Okay, someone else wish to say something, then we'll give it over to Dr. Polio.
Sure, I'll say something. Definitely, I want to take the time to thank you, Dr. Polio, for supporting the work. And I know it's not easy. And I think one of the best things is the racial equity growth plan. I know right now it's just for administrators, but definitely thinking about branching that out for everyone, because everyone's level in their racial equity growth is different. So I think we're on to the start of something new and something that's going to be great. And so thank you for leading us, and thank you for being a champion of the work.
Great. Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate that.
All right, Dr. Polio, I'll let y'all close out, and then Delquan will be sending this out to you all, and we will go through it again, and we'll have the list of priorities and what we're going to zero in on first and keep moving the work forward. So Dr. Polio, I'll let you close out, then we'll get off here. And guys, thank you all so much. Delquan, good job.
I just want to thank everybody. I tell you, this work is so hard. And if it were easy, a lot of people would have it done by now. But what we're doing is that tough work of year after year. It's a pillar of ours. It's a commitment. We're not backing down. And then, the positive for me that came out of all of the unrest of the summer, which has been hard, but it gave me more courage to fight this, because I know with the things that have happened in our nation around race, we need warriors in this fight, and they need to be black and white. It needs to be everybody that are warriors in this fight. And I'm thankful that we started this work before all of this. There's so many districts out there right now, as John knows, that are scrambling around trying to figure out how to do this now. And all we had to say was, we've got to push harder. We've got to push harder. And so I believe this. I believe we're on to something. I know we all want it to move fast and faster. I believe we're on to something, and I believe that we will be the district that the nation can look to and say, look what they did with their racial equity policy. So more encouraged than I've ever been. I'm encouraged about November 3rd and how that will impact equity in our district. And if we don't win, we'll keep fighting and come back again. So I just want to thank you guys are all doing great work. let's keep pushing. Let's keep fighting. Next time we get together, we'll celebrate how much progress we've made since October 22nd. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, y'all be safe and good night.
Good night.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.